So another key ally of Peter Obi, who resigned from the Labour Party last month, grants his first television interview on the subject exclusively to Arise News. And once again, the resilience of the Labour Party, one of the most successful parties in the 2023 presidential election, is being sorely tested by the departure of Oseloka Obaze, who was driven away by the sharp edge of fury over what he says were the irregularities, fraud and criminality that riddled Labour's Anambra governorship primary election in April. Mr. Obaze was, of course, at one stage Peter Obi's campaign manager and a key strategist for the Obedient movement, as well as Mr. Obi's political advisor. Prior to this, he was secretary to the government of Anambra State when Mr. Obi was governor of the state, and was himself at one stage a governorship candidate, before which he served as a diplomat at the United Nations. So some serious pedigree there, and clearly a huge loss to the Labour Party and to the parts of the party that are still affiliated with Peter Obi. And while almost nobody believes that Mr. Obi, the man acknowledged as the national leader of the Labour Party, is the problem, more and more people admit to seeing his inability to restore order to the party as a problem. So is this another sign that as the pillars of the Labour Party continue to crumble, Peter Obi is left with virtually no wiggle room other than to pack up, follow Chief Obaze's example, and depart from the party? Well, from his decision to resign from the Labour Party and where his political career goes from here, I'm suitably delighted to say that I'm now joined exclusively in the studio by the former UN diplomat and Peter Obi's close ally, Oseloka Obaze, in his first television interview since he quit the Labour Party 4 weeks ago. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you, Charles. It's a pleasure to be here.
We really are delighted to have you here.
Well,
Thank
it's been
you very
2
much.
years since I've been here.
That is very true. The last time you were sitting on that chair was in 2022, actually.
Yes, May.
So it's actually going on 3 years now.
Thereabout.
So you are now officially a former member of the Labour Party. Tell us how things got to that stage.
Life is dynamic. You get to a point, you decide if you want to, the fork in the road, if you want to go left or you want to go right, or if you want to stay and subsist within the status quo. And that's all there is to it.
But there is a reason why you left.
I think my letter of resignation was very clear. There were issues that I was not comfortable with within the party. And I tried my best to make sure such issues were resolved. And when you come to a point where nobody's listening and you make a choice as to whether you want to become complicit at things that are untoward or if you want to move on. I could not fashion myself becoming vicariously liable for some of the things that were happening within the Labour Party. I'm not an elected official of the Labour Party. Neither is Peter Obi. So the leadership of the Labour Party is very clear. The hierarchy is very clear. The nomenclature is very clear. So those within that cadre who made decisions that things ought to go a particular way or in a particular way had their reasons. It did not quite jive with me. I did not jive with my moral consciousness. Neither did it jive with my understanding of the rule of law. As a matter of fact, it did offend my sense of rule of law. And there was no way I could stay and become part of that.
So the honourable thing to do was to resign.
It was, yes.
Right. But what were those things that were untoward?
Well, I did spell it out. I'm
no longer
a Labour Party.
A lot of the members of the audience didn't read your letter.
Yes.
So just tell us, encapsulate for us what was in that letter.
Those were the things that, that happened around Anambra State, the politics of it.
The governorship primaries.
Yes, let me put it in perspective. Since the 2023 election, both the presidential and the general election, Labour Party had gone to several elections. We had the governorship election in Kogi, in Imo, in Bayelsa, and Edo. And they were all disasters. They were all absolute disasters because the leadership did either not understand how to manage a process for a party that had become the third ranking party in the country, and they were unwilling to listen. Anambra State presented us an opportunity to do things differently. And in principle, it was agreed that we would do things differently. And that did not happen. And because I come from Anambra State, I live in Anambra State, I said, look, there has to be an endpoint to every titration. And so that's where it got to the point. And the best thing to do was to leave those who wanted to do things differently to their own devices. I didn't want to be part of it.
Mm. And there were reports that you were very angry over what was reported to be the alleged imposition of George Moalu, a former national auditor of the APC, as the Labour Party's governorship candidate in Anambra State, and that imposition was reportedly orchestrated by Mr. Peter Obi, and that you felt betrayed by Mr. Obi, and what you saw as Labour's anti-democratic actions, and that was why you resigned. Is that a fact?
Betrayed by Peter Obi, mere speculation. Angry at Peter Obi, mere speculation. And that's why I'm here. Mm. The Labour Party has a constitution just like this country. The constitution is the ground norm of the activities of the party. It says what you're supposed to do, when you're supposed to do it. If Section 1 says you must have primaries or Congress in the 325 wards of the party, and you don't, that violates your own constitution. That violates morality. That violates common sense in a country where we're trying to do things right. That's one. If, in the same vein, the constitution says so many number of people are supposed to be members of the Congress, and it's there in black and white, and it says the number is 5, and you arbitrarily says the number is 3. Something is wrong. And it behoved me to speak up, and I wasn't the only one. But because we're in a country that has become very transactional, those who speak up often get compromised, and they get some palliatives and things like that, and it becomes business as usual. At the juncture where I am in my life and the struggle I have been part of, I did not think it was the proper thing to do. If my departing caused any type of consternation, so be it. I did not abuse anybody. I did not ask any member of the Labour Party to live with me. I came into Labour Party alone, I left alone. That does not mean I don't have followers, but it was just something that one had to speak to. And the mere whole thing about speculation about this having to do with Peter Obi or not, Peter Obi is the titular leader of the party. He's not the chairman of the party. He's not the national organizing secretary. He's not even a member of the NWC or the BOT. So we have to make that clear delineation of where he stands and what is the structure of the
Well, as you said, that's one of the reasons why you're here. But there's no question in your mind that the primaries were deeply flawed and that they lacked credibility. You've made that clear enough. But given that Anambra is Peter Obi's home state, as it is your state, and that he governed the state for 8 years, and the fact that he was the Labour Party's presidential candidate, and is seen as the party's national leader, if you like, surely he could have influenced a much cleaner outcome than what you described as outright irregularities bordering on fraud and criminality.
I stand by those words, and whether he shares that perspective is up to him. I did not speak for him in that particular instance, and they were clearly written. So I wasn't being ambiguous. And I think those who are concerned understand what I'm saying. But this is not my position. I've left Labour Party. I don't speak for them. Those who are curious as to what happened or who have experienced similar situation. And by the way, my departure from Labour Party shouldn't create any irritation to anybody. in the short span I've been in public politics here, I've been a member of ABGA, I was a member of PDP, and I'm a member of the Labour Party. It's a choice. And
well, you were a member of the Labour Party.
I was, yes.
Right.
And I've moved on. I do not belong to any party. I'm not a carrying member of any party, and I don't see myself being in any party in the foreseeable future.
Right.
But I have a role to play in this country. I think for somebody who's blessed as a person, I ought to give back to the to the society.
I'm going to get to.
I think that's part of the thing, because if we were all to acquiesce to situations where everybody is deemed to be malleable, then I think we have a problem.
I think a lot of people would agree that you did the honourable thing, but I'm going to get to where you are now in your kind of political evolution. But just to get through that bit, which, let's face it, a lot of people are curious about, because they respect you, they respect Mr. Peter Obi, they hold both of you in very high regard, and people want to know, how did things get to this point? I mean, did you discuss your exit from the Labour Party with Peter Obi prior to your resignation or after you took that decision? I mean, did you seek clarification regarding, for instance, his neutrality and non-interference in that primary process?
Charles, you have to put things in perspective. The party was already embroiled in a crisis.
Indeed.
The issues at that point were actually before the court. I think they had gone up to the Supreme Court. The night before the primaries, there was a Supreme Court ruling. And I believed that the rule of law should have allowed the party to respect the Supreme Court and decide, even if it meant postponing that primary for a few days until you get a clear interpretation of the CTC to the Supreme Court. Now, I was not going to be part of a primary, even mere presence, that was doubtful when I was not sure what the Supreme Court ruling was as to who was the leader of the party. But those who were in charge felt confident, supremely comfortable and confident that they could actually go against the ruling of the Supreme Court and nothing would happen. And that's exactly what they did. So the first aspect of it is the rule of law. And in doing that, they also did not conform fully with the requirements of the constitution of the party. And you know, the funny thing is this. I've had people who say to me, worse things happen in APC, worse things happen in PDP. And my simple question is this: does that make it right? And they said no. I said, so why do you justify something that you know is not happening? After all, the focus of the Labour Party, its bearing, was one that offered a lot of aspiration and hope to Nigerians. And if it would get to the point, because it had internal contradictions, and to the point where they start doing things that were untoward, and then somebody has to call them out on that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But that's the other aspect that's very important, isn't it? Because, I mean, you were, I mean, I don't know if you still are, a key advisor to Peter Obi. He's been engaged for some time in trying to fix the Labour Party. I mean, he said as much himself. It hasn't gone forward. The party isn't coming together. Even after that Supreme Court ruling, the impasse and the splintering appears to have worsened, which is one of the reasons you decided to leave the party. I mean, you gave that as one of your reasons in your letter. Would you advise Peter Obi to do the same sooner rather than later as 2027 draws near? Should he walk away and seek his political fortune elsewhere before it is too late and this growing disaffection consumes the Labour Party along with himself? I mean, what advice would you give him as his political advisor?
Charles, it might be a cliche, but you don't tell a master politician whether he wants to eat his eggs sunny side up or boiled. Peter Obi has numerous advisors, both formal and informal. I just happen to be one of them. And I'm sure he gets good counsel. There's an inherent danger that if he decides to walk away from Labour tomorrow, people will say, he left ABGA, he left PDP, now he's leaving Labour. And I think he's done his utmost to try to reconcile the internal contradictions. And we've all contributed to that. Now, it takes two to tango. I would think that in a party that is a family, every family has its own squabbles. There comes a time when somebody will say, for the sake of the country, for the sake of the party, let's shed the swords and talk honestly. You've gone all the way to the Supreme Court. If the Supreme Court decision does not satisfy the requirement, and I think I said that in my letter, in my explanation, that the crisis has gone beyond what could be adjudicated by the court, by morality, or by arbitration. Because some people have just dug in, Labour Party belongs to them, and every other person who's on our side, and that includes Peter Obi, by the way, can play their own game, or you can take a hike. I decided to take a hike. I've got nothing to lose. I've invested a lot in Labour Party. I've invested a lot of politics. But there comes a time when you must stand up to the counted, and that's all there is to it.
And given all that you've seen happening in the Labour Party, which you've articulated brilliantly, how much of a weak flank has the party become in that solid wall that the collective opposition is trying to build against the ruling APC?
The coalition exists within a very broad spectrum. Labour Party would just be one of the pillars of the coalition, assuming they're interested in being part of the coalition.
Nevertheless, the Labour Party, as you correctly pointed out, is one of the top parties, the three top parties.
Precisely.
At least it was in 2023.
Precisely.
I doubt if it still is.
Precisely. But I would want to believe that the state of the nation requires a coalition that transcends the three major parties, because any way you look at it, they've been at the apex of the leadership of this country, or in the opposition. There are smaller parties that have aspirations. There are smaller parties that might even have ideologies. Most of the parties here don't have ideologies.
Yeah, but can they stand up to the APC, even if they come together?
Well,
I mean, you need Labour and the PDP, don't you?
Charles, any way you look at it, I think united you stand, divided you fall. If all the parties can consolidate to form a coalition, the question is, what do you want to do to restore this country? The country is in dire straits, no question about that. And we all talk about it, we all write about them, about the situation. Now, who comes to the table, and if they can rally to a consensus, becomes the core issue as to what needs to be done. If Labour is extricated from the coalition will go ahead. I don't think it's going to stop them. But the question is, I think the question you're asking is, where does Peter Obi fit into
That's the point I was making.
Into that configuration?
Would you say that Peter Obi's role in this opposition coalition is vital, but clearly unpredictable at the moment, as no one knows yet who will actually play the leading role in that coalition, and a lot of people don't see him playing second fiddle?
I can tell you this from the little I know. Any coalition going on to 2027 that excludes Peter Obi will literally fail.
Right.
So he's an integral, solid part of the consideration of that coalition. And I'm sure a lot of people are talking to him. I'm tangentially involved in the discussions, so I know. The question is, how do those who come to form this coalition rally to a consensus, set aside their differences, past and present, and also the individual aspirations, the right to think that because I'm in the coalition, I must be. I think what you need, and I think I've written about this, you need to find a fit for the purpose leadership. And by all means, out of 220 million people, Peter Obi is but one man. I think we can find perhaps 10 Peter Obis in this country. But because politics has become so slanted in the negative sense, a lot of good people stay away from politics.
Right.
And those of us who have ventured into it, are being clobbered left and right. And the question is either you join, if you can't beat them, join them.
So what do you see we're running out of time, what do you see on the horizon for that opposition coalition, given what you've just told us? Well,
history tends to repeat itself. We know how this current government, the APC government, came into power. They came as opposition. So if they can do it, other people can do it too. I think.
Yeah, but if you're missing Labour and the PDP, I mean, how are you going to do it?
Well, you can be missing Labour and the PDP as entities. You might not be missing them by getting those who had been in Labour and those who have been in PDP to coalesce into...
So the parties can remain off, but you just pull the people out.
Parties are just special purpose vehicles for people to fulfill their aspiration. At some point, you might even discard all the political parties and find a new party like they did with APC.
And beyond Labour and Peter Obi and the opposition coalition, how healthy or unhealthy would you say the political ecosystem in Nigeria is today after 2 years of the Tinubu administration?
Fairly troubling. And I say that with all sense of responsibility. You can rephrase that to ask the man on the street, are you better off today than you were 2 years ago? And I think the answer categorically is no. And that speaks volumes. And it's one thing to criticize a government because you're in opposition, but it's also also something else to convey the deep-seated complaints, consternation, disenfranchisement, discontentment that Nigerians feel. I'm not one to criticize somebody for the sake of criticizing that person, especially when you're in public office. I respect the office and I respect individuals. I'm not into name calling. But we must speak truth to power. This government has not done well by Nigerians. I'm sorry. And if somebody needs to say it, we have to say it loud and clear. Now, it's up to them. They're still in power. They've got 2 years to go back to the drawing board and see what they can do to fix the country. But at the current pace we're going, I'm a bit apprehensive as to where we'll be in 2027 and beyond. Now, is there a clear alternative? The discussion is ongoing. Will it materialize to something cohesive enough to upset the present government constitutionally? I don't know. But I think the opportunity is there. If people can set aside their personal whims and caprices, their personal idiosyncrasies, and look at nation building, national interest, and better still, look at the posterity of this country. I think they don't deserve the legacy we're about to bequeath to them. We need to do something about this country.
And just before we go, we started this conversation talking about you, so let's end it talking about you. I mean, you are clearly not a lapsed politician now. I mean, you've left the Labour Party, but you're still knee-deep in politics, are you?
I'm a political scientist by training. I'm a political animal. I write about politics. I discuss politics. I'm involved tangentially in the discussions at the national level, less so at what is happening at the state level, but nevertheless. As a human being, I have my sympathies, and those are personal to me. But am I joining any political party anytime soon? I don't think so. Am I going to be involved behind the scene in helping articulate what I think is the way forward for this country? I will do my utmost. If I succeed, well, that's a brownie point. If I don't, it becomes one of those things that happen. Many politicians have gone that route.
On that note, I want to thank you very much indeed.
Thanks very much.
And we really appreciate your taking the time to talk to us. Oseloka Obaze is a former UN diplomat. He's Peter Obi's close ally, and he's just resigned from the Labour Party, 4 weeks ago, and this is his first television interview since he quit that party 4 weeks ago. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Charles. It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
Pleasure to have you here.